Google Play Unsportsmanlike. Joe Biden's immigration plan is introduced, and a ridiculous opinion from a conservative columnist. All this and more today on Breaking on the Daily. So let's begin with that Google Play story, because according to the U.S. states, so for those who don't know, Google is currently undergoing an antitrust suit from a number of states. I don't remember exactly how many there are, but it's a ridiculous amount. It's something like 30 or 40. So these states are now likely to argue that Google Play, the App Store, is unsportsmanlike, and its monopoly on Android apps is an unfair competition, essentially. Which I find a little bit silly, honestly. You see, I'm not the biggest advocate of antitrust law on a broader sense. I don't think it's worked much in its very long history. I fail to see where it's ever actually done anything of worth. But in this case, in particular, Google Play, though it is mostly the proprietor of apps on the Android platform, and is the thing that is naturally or automatically imposed upon upon Android users, I don't see why they aren't going after Apple Store rather than Google Play. Because Google Play, and Android more specifically, Android, you can get apps from anywhere. You can just download APKs off of the internet and install them. Which is why, by the way, Android is infinitely better than Apple. If you were using an Apple device, do not. Even if you don't like Google, it's like an anti-Google stance. Apple's worse. Apple is much worse, particularly in this respect, than Android is. Because Android, you can be private. Android, you can get away from Google fairly easily, honestly, if you're willing to mess with your firmware, particularly, which isn't as difficult as it might sound. But Google Play, I don't know. I don't have that many problems with it, though I do not like their current editorial decisions. And yes, they are editorial decisions. I don't know if this would these sort of arguments would necessarily apply to them, because they aren't actually limiting you from using other sources of apps. Yes, they have you essentially check a box saying, "Oh, do you want stuff to come from unknown sources?" And it takes literally a second, and every time you download an APK, that's fine. But this seems more of a problem that will be solved through people actually understanding the technology they're using, rather than trying to get at it through legislation, because or through court proceedings. Because here's the fact of the matter: government is a very blunt tool, and no matter how you use it, no matter where you use it, government is only ever going to be very, very blunt. It's only going to be able to act like a bull in a china shop, no matter what you're doing. It's only ever going to be a bull. If you want to have something like Google Play, or this scenario with tech censorship, you need to be very careful about it. And I think that's very difficult for government to do. And a lot of the stuff that is being proposed by even supposed conservatives seems to be wrong. I mean, you can talk almost instantaneously about the idea of repealing 230 outright rather than simply reforming it, or just interpreting it better through the courts, which, by the way, those two latter things I absolutely support, particularly the last one, as of the branches of government and the types of government you can do, judiciary, despite my dislike for them, is in fact the most subtle way to actually change things. They actually, in a lot of ways, rely on subtlety of interpretation to even do what they do. And that is both their major flaw, in my view, and also their great strength in this case. So I am very much in favor of taking a 230 case up to the Supreme Court to decide really where immunity begins and ends. Because it really needs to be decided, because it's entirely unclear right now. Because for all we know, if the New York Times decided to claim Section 230 immunity, they probably could, based on the current interpretation. That's how broad it is. But obviously, in the original writing of Section 230, that was not what was meant. So there needs to be certain interpretation that needs to be done there. But it's kind of strange, because these antitrust suits, and a lot of them which are coming up, and you see things with Rumble happening as well, with their antitrust suit, which seems like a very good argument. I'm kind of uncharacteristically in support of these things. I'm generally not in favor of it, because I see antitrust as a way for government and politicians in particular to just get lobbying money from corporations. Take the 1995 Microsoft antitrust case. That's pretty much the prime example to me, because before 1995, for those who don't know, Microsoft wasn't giving anything to government. They weren't doing lobbying pretty much at all. Almost no government money was coming out of Microsoft. Post 1995, post the antitrust suit, they're giving millions of dollars to government every year. And on top of that, there hasn't been a single antitrust suit come at them since. That's what I see when it comes to antitrust suits, most of the time. And it is kind of, but it is worth it to mention throughout all of this that Google, Facebook, these corporations are not necessarily private companies, at least not in a strict definitional way. What they are, in a lot of cases, are government-funded groups which only continue to exist in the way they do because of their government subsidies. Google, as I've mentioned in the past, has had $600 million, and by the way, this is like 2014 numbers, has had $600 million in government subsidies and government funds. More accurate than something like a private company to describe a company like Google, it would be better to describe them as something like a government front group, something like a public front, because YouTube famously has never made money. Do you really believe that if Google was left to its own devices and didn't have the hundreds of millions of dollars they've gotten in government subsidies, that they would really exist in the way they do now, or that they would have the kind of monopoly on search, or they would have the kind of monopoly on YouTube that they do now? And so, solving the problem with antitrust could potentially be legitimate, but at the same time, it looks as though you're trying to solve a problem that was created fundamentally by government with more government. That's what it looks like to me, because DuckDuckGo is not getting the kind of subsidies that Google has gotten in the past, okay? Minds is not getting the types of government subsidies that Facebook has gotten in the past. It's just not happening. And, it's not even just the American government. They get government subsidies from all sorts of foreign governments. I'm sure they've gotten government money from China. I'm not actually sure about that. I haven't looked into it as much as I maybe should. But another interesting story with regard to tech is a lobbying group is now suing Apple to remove Telegram from App Store for allowing hate speech, which seems to me a quite silly thing, because what grounds could they possibly have to sue? What grounds could they possibly have to say, App Store, this place that is supposed to be essentially a platform and act as a sort of neutral arbiter of giving people things? Yeah, we should be able to sue them for following that dictate, for actually having their Section 230 immunity protected and actually using their Section 230 immunity properly. We should be able to sue them for following the law, is essentially their argument. It's such a silly thing. But to continue on, it's just, oh my gosh. So, a lobbyist group is suing Apple in an effort to get free speech messaging platform Telegram removed from the App Store, claiming it allows extremists to spread hate speech. Telegram has seen a surge of users since Twitter and Facebook permanently suspended Donald Trump. We go on in this article to talk pretty much about Telegram and whatever. But a lobbying group called the Coalition for a Safer Web. Oh man, if you couldn't tell what the sort of disposition of this sort of group would be just based on the name, I think you're a lost cause. But they have called it for it to be deleted from big tech app stores. And in particular, this group has filed a lawsuit against Apple, alleging that it has failed to hold Telegram accountable for violating its terms of service. What? It's such a silly thing. So the complaint filed in the U.S. District Court for North California accuses Telegram of allowing anti-Semites, neo-Nazis, and white supremacists to use the platform to foment hate. To quote from them, Telegram currently serves as the preferred neo-Nazi/white supremacist communication channel, fanning white anti-Semitic and anti-black incitement during the current wave of protests across America, the lawsuit claims. So it essentially starts with, oh, it's all of these things. It's platforming people we don't like. It's platforming these awful, terrible people. And that means it shouldn't exist. So, and then they claim that by continuing to host the Telegram on the Apple App Store, the defendant facilitates religious threats against him and his family that has caused Ambassador Ginsburg for his life. So essentially it's claiming that it's threatening certain people, which I don't understand this. I do not understand. This suit is probably not going to go anywhere. Though I wouldn't be surprised if the court finds standing, because it's just such a nonsense doctrine, standing is. But really, they don't have any standing to sue, because I don't understand how they could possibly sue about a contractual agreement between two parties that have nothing to do with them. I don't know how that could possibly be the case. It's literally something that has nothing to do with them, but they get to sue. That makes sense. Oh, man. But to move on from tech stuff, to move on to more political things, Trump has now issued an executive order protecting Americans from over-criminalization by regulations. So essentially, what this executive order does is it makes it so that there is a certain the government places regulatory agencies and such have to follow a certain standard for every regulation that they do post and they do put up, that they have to make the punishments clear. They can't hide the ball, essentially, and have it so that only lawyers could possibly understand what's going on and what the punishments for any given crime are. It's essentially a transparency bill. This is good. This is eminently good. And people all around conservative spaces, all the black pills and will go around and say, well, what's the point? Joe Biden's inauguration is literally tomorrow. What's the point of this regulation going through? And here's the thing. In order to repeal this executive order, Biden has to specifically null and void it. All right? This goes with a lot of things that Trump has been doing over the past few weeks. Take the Taiwan thing, for example. Take the recent ruling and regulation from one of his regulatory agencies that said that, banking institutions cannot discriminate based on political view. They can only cancel your card, essentially, if they find a substantial financial risk and they have to do a financial audit and whatever. And similar stuff to that effect. All of these things, in order to be reversed by Biden, Biden has to show absolute contempt. And he has to prove, essentially, that Trump was right about every single thing he said about him. Because do I think that this sort of thing will, in all likelihood, be repealed through Biden? Yeah. But here's the thing. I'm going to whine and complain about it when it happens. People like me are going to whine and complain about it when it happens. And we're going to get a lot of political, capital through that process. Because let's be completely honest here, a lot of this is political posturing. A lot of this is, these are all good things. Eminently good, inarguable, essentially good for everyone except the bureaucrat. If Biden then removes it, well, it proves he's beholden to bureaucrats, does it not? Because this is good for everyone except them. Take, once again, the Taiwan example. In the Taiwan example, acknowledging Taiwan's existence is good for everyone except China. So if Biden then says, okay, we're not acknowledging Taiwan, or we're just going to let China invade Taiwan or something like that, if something insane happens, well, Biden's just showing that he is truly Beijing Biden. If he goes and he demands the repeal of the regulation that says that banking institutions cannot discriminate based on political view, he has to then say that, yeah, I'm pro-political censorship. I'm pro all of these sorts of things. All of these eminently terrible things that are bad for everyone except for the people in charge. That's what he has to do. And it's going to make him look terrible. It's going to make him look awful. And that's very, very good. That is very good. It sets up very well for a 2022 steamroll, which has pretty much been in the cards the entire way through here, because that's kind of the nature of politics, especially after the trespassing turned Reichstag fire that was the Capitol insurrection on January 6th. But of course, Biden isn't doing anything that no one would expect, because he has more and more things. And to move on to specifically something he is doing that is going to ruin his political capital, Biden has proposed an 8-year citizen path for immigrants. This shows a clear distinction between how Biden is acting and how Trump is acting. We're seeing a clear reversal on immigration policy. And the fact of the matter is, for the most part, and going outside of the coastal elites who aren't really affected by it except for slightly higher labor costs, for the average American citizen, for people, on the border, for instance, they know illegal immigration is a bad thing. Illegal immigration is not a popular thing. It never has been. It never will be. And the fact of the matter is that postulating about this and making it his most important, one of his most important policy positions is not going to help Biden in any respect. It's not going to make him look like a unifier or someone who's going to do the right thing, because let's be honest, completely fair, the illegal immigrants broke laws. They broke laws. That's the nature of crossing a border illegally. And if you don't have a border, well, you don't have a country. Countries require borders to exist. Otherwise, they are just enigmatic groups of people across a enigmatic land. It's simply nonsense. And I'm not even sure this sort of thing will pass, other than likely in executive order form, because of people like Joe Manchin, people who are going to defect from the Democrats. Because a lot of something that is very much understated in American politics and federal politics is the fact that people in Congress, it's not D versus R, and we just have numbers, and then whichever gets through, the Democrat platform gets through, or the Republican platform gets through. No, all of these numbers that we see comparing the size of each party in the Senate or the size of the party in the Congress is a representation of people. And those people can be in very vulnerable districts. They can be in purple districts. They can be in red districts that for some reason went blue. And if they are in such districts, if they do not act in a particular way, which includes, in a lot of cases, not voting with your party, not because of any particularly principled thing, but simply out of a pragmatic need to actually retain their seat, what ends up happening a lot of the time, and you saw this a lot in 2017 and 2018, is that you don't get a lot of what you need to get done, even if you have all the majorities. Because unless the mandate is so clear that people who ran on being a hard line get in across the board, unless something like that happens, which is very rarely happen in any democratic system, much less the American system, you're not going to see much radical change, because there are always going to be those moderates who are in the majority, but only if they do particular things that don't have anything to, that please their constituents, that don't make them look like partisan hacks. That's what's that's what they have to do. So people like Joe Manchin are going to have to, in a lot of cases, not vote for these sorts of things, because if they do vote for these sorts of things, they're gone. They're gone. They don't retain their political career for any more than another 5 milliseconds. So anyone with political forbearing, anyone with political foresight will be able to, will have to avoid these sorts of things. But talking more about Biden and the inauguration that's happening tomorrow, 200,000 flags have been placed on the National Mall in lieu of the totally real people that voted for him and totally would come if not for COVID. Despite the fact that he wasn't breaking 1,000 people in crowds before COVID was a thing. Jeez. All of these sorts of measures that have been taken over the past week in preparation for Biden's inauguration are just what everyone expects them to be. They are to save face. They are there simply to say, oh, no. We have people. No. He's well liked. He's extremely well liked. Most popular president in history in the Hong Kong totally fair election. Yeah, totally nothing's wrong. Don't look into it. Oh, there's 200. We put down 200,000 flags. Totally not a problem. Nothing's happening. Don't look. Yeah, totally fair Hong Kong election. Yeah, I totally believe that. And it just looks silly. It just looks silly. And it looks like cowardice. It really does. It does not look like someone who won a totally fair Hong Kong election. Which Biden totally did win the totally fair Hong Kong election. I'm sorry for repeating that so often. But it's just... the photo, it's a sign of weakness. It really is. It's a sign of weakness. Because they're saying, oh, it represents all the people who are going to be watching from around the world. All right, I want to really see if they break 200,000 on their viewership, because I'll guarantee you, I'm not going to be there. I'm not going to be watching that live, and I don't suggest you do. Do not let them bump up their numbers. And if you're going to watch it from like OANN, just to spite them. Watch it from Right Side Broadcasting. Watch it from somewhere that is not C-SPAN, that is not the Democratic Party. Watch it elsewhere. Watch it on some right-wing network. And make them have to mention that. If you're going to watch it anywhere. And if you watch it on the right-wing network, hey, maybe we'll have more people on, say, Right Side Broadcasting than we'll have on the official stream. That'd be really funny, wouldn't it? Yeah, that'd be very funny. And it would be very funny to see that. But on to our last story, and this one, oh my gosh. We have an op-ed from Max Boot that we're going to be doing a rundown and kind of going through and seeing how terrible it is. So, the headline to this op-ed is, Trump couldn't have incited sedition without the help of Fox News. Now, this guy is Trump derangement syndrome extraordinaire and a supposed conservative. Supposedly. But this article is a trip, because this guy, I don't know when he's going to admit that he just isn't a conservative, but at this point, I don't even think it's arguable. And we'll go through as to why I believe that as we go through this article. So, first he starts with a statement about how, it's hard to overstate the enormity of what occurred on January 6, 2021, a date that will live in infamy beside December 7th, 1941 and September 11th, 2001. First of all, you're comparing a scenario in which people walked into a building and, for the most part, they weren't supposed to be there, to be fair. I mean, there is enough evidence to suggest that maybe some of them were just let in, but, let's assume that they are trespassing, where they walked in and they followed the velvet ropes for the most part. And the few people who didn't follow the velvet ropes and actually went into the Senate chambers just stood around and took stupid pictures. And as for everything else that happened that day, everything else, the 5 deaths that get quoted so often, only 2 of them, to start off with, are a result of what happened that day. The 3 others were medical complications that seemed to have nothing to do with anything that was happening at the protest, and I don't even think happened near the Capitol building at all. It was essentially just old men keeling over because they're old. Is seemingly what happened. As for the other 2, it's a protester and a police officer. One was assaulted by protesters. The other was seemingly unjustifiably shot by police. All right, and that is according to all the video evidence that I've seen thus far. Of course, that could change. Evidence can come out. I'm not taking a hardline stance. We'll see. There's probably going to be an investigation of that, or at least I hope there is, because the woman at least deserves an investigation. All right, and that goes the case with everyone shot by police. Everyone deserves an investigation. All right, let's be clear there. Because, but next book then goes on to say it's the first time the U.S. Capitol has been ransacked. I think that's a bit of an overstatement on what happened. A few people stole some stuff, but other than that, not a lot happened. It really wasn't ransacked. I mean, the idea of ransacking that you get is like, oh, everything is taken out. You steal a bunch of stuff. Nothing was stolen. Not a whole lot was stolen. We didn't see a whole lot of stuff being stolen. It was pretty much a podium and maybe a laptop. We don't even really know if there was a laptop stolen because the person who was accused of stealing the laptop denied the allegation, but whatever. If I remember correctly, I think that person's actually been arrested. But this isn't even if we're comparing situations, remember 2018? Remember the Kavanaugh hearings? Remember how people stormed into the Capitol building and stormed into the Senate chambers? Like this time, the difference being is that they were hailed as heroes, Me Too aficionados in that case, are completely ridiculous. And he says, as a result, Donald Trump has been the only president ever impeached twice. Yeah, because both impeachments were complete nonsense. And he said it's a scene reminiscent of the Civil War. It's just so much bloviating, so much over-exaggeration about all of this sort of stuff. And he goes on to say 5 people died. It's just wrong. The attackers are hanging Mike Pence. Oh no, I don't really care. Yeah, it's bad, but not a big deal. And they said, came within a minute. And I don't even think he's talking about the same group of people here. I think in all likelihood, the people chanting hang Mike Pence were probably outside. And so he says, there was and then he goes on to insinuate certain things that don't have a lot of evidence to support them other than some people's word that don't really have, we shouldn't really believe have any sort of special knowledge about this, about the motives of certain people. He says, the seditionists assembled at the president's invitation. Because this guy is quintessential Trump Ranger syndrome. But to get on to the main point of this article, he's trying to say that, we should silence everyone who supports the president because of this. We should silence Fox News. We should silence Newsmax. We should silence OANN. We should silence all these people. All of these people should have all of their support defunded because this totally doesn't sound like authoritarianism. This totally doesn't sound like someone who's worried about finding out that everything that they've said for the past, few months has been absolutely incorrect. All right? And he talks about how, you guys are spreading lies about the election. If they're spreading lies, tell the truth. You'll win. This is looking like Weimar. Dude, it's authoritarianism. I don't know what else to say. This guy doesn't believe in free speech. This guy doesn't believe in limited government. I'm sure if he was asked, he would say, yeah, the government should be able to regulate speech. They should be able to say, Fox News, you can't question our elections. Completely ridiculous assertion. Completely ridiculous assertion. We can't question our elections? Then do we have elections at all, might I ask? Do we have elections at all if we cannot question the integrity of them? All right. Key to having a democratic process is actually the questioning of it. It is the adversarial process. It is the idea that we are going to scrutinize every single aspect of our elections to make sure that everything was square. But that didn't happen this time. We didn't have investigations. We didn't follow any sort of suspicious circumstances. We didn't look into any of that. No, we outright refused to look into any of that. We don't have a democratic process, at least not on a federal level. It's at least very much broken. It could be fixed. To be clear, I still think that there are things we can do. We have 30 state houses. We can get voter integrity stuff done. We can do a lot of things that we just haven't even tried to do yet. But currently, our election system is not functioning because there's seemingly no way to actually look into the election after the fact or even before the fact. Because before the election, you have no standing because there's no injury in fact. After the election, you have no standing because lashes. All right? That's what it's been. That's what it's been over the past few months. It is insane to me that there is no way to question anything. Utterly insane. And I think that's where I'm going to leave you today. This has been I'm Cal Kidman, and subscribe for more wherever you are, whether you're on BitChute, whether you're on Brighteon, wherever you are. If you're on YouTube, go into the description, look for my alt tech presences, follow me on Minds, wherever we are. This has been Breaking on the Daily. I'm Cal Kidman, and I'm out.